It's time to say goodbye to one of the best things that Xbox has ever done. What's up, y'all, and welcome to Xbox Ready, my YouTube channel that is all about Xbox. And today, I'm going to be doing something a little different. Usually, I react and give my takes on what Xbox is currently doing. I theorize about what they're going to do in the future, good or bad. But today, we're going to be taking a walk down memory lane with our old friend, the Xbox 360. Because unfortunately, on Monday, July 29th, the 360 digital storefront will be shut down forever. I'm feeling very retrospective today. I got some bad news about a family member of mine, and I think the human instinct whenever something like that happens to someone is to think back on the past and think back on these moments that you had with that person. And simultaneously, the Xbox community is sort of going through a similar thing with the closure of the 360 digital storefront. I'm sure a lot of you are out there thinking back on the good old days of the 360 and Xbox Live and talking trash to people in Halo 3 lobbies. It's been a long time since the Xbox 360 was at its peak, but as of the 29th, the last couple of vestiges from that generation are going to be wiped away. Now, as much as I want to say I've been a day one fan of Xbox, I've been here from the very beginning, I can't. I didn't have an original Xbox, but my older brother did. And the fact that it was something my older brother had and I didn't have automatically made it 10 times as cool. From my perspective, as I think I was 8 years old when the Xbox launched, Xbox, there was something like edgy and cool about it. I was playing games like Sly Cooper, Jak and Daxter, Final Fantasy on my PlayStation 2, while my brother over on the Xbox was playing like Halo Combat Evolved, Fable, Max Payne. There's something so cool and mysterious about it at the time. And when the 360 generation rolled around, I would like to say I was there from day one, but I was not. It took me a couple of years to get a 360. A lot of my viewers, according to my analytics, are my age or older, so you'll remember this, but for my younger audience, well, back in the 360 generation, the United States was going through an economic recession. And while my family wasn't down and out or anything like that, the fact of the matter is that my parents had 5 kids to raise, so they didn't exactly have money to spend on a brand new console whenever one dropped. So I didn't get my 360 until 2007, but for those first 2 years, my experience with the 360 was exclusively through me going over to my friend Matt Swanson's house. He had a 360, and I would just find any excuse I could to go over and play on that thing, man. And sometimes it was tough because they only had one, and he had an older brother too who wanted to play as well. But despite those limitations, man, it was still so much fun. He showed me Gears, Halo 3, all games that just blew my mind at the time. And the most mind-blowing of all to me was The Elder Scrolls Oblivion. I remember when my buddy Matt got this game, he called me over specifically. He was like, you gotta come over here right now and check out just the opening of this game. It's gonna scramble your brains. So I come over, he plays the opening cinematic of the Emperor giving his monologue as the camera pans over Cyrodiil and over the White Imperial City. And I was just standing there, gobsmacked, man. I couldn't believe what I was looking at. And I know it sounds silly now because you look at that game in 2024 and you're like, these graphics look goofy, they look silly. But back in the day, that was hot. Oblivion was a single player game, but we would take turns, we would watch each other play. And the fact that this game existed where you can walk around and any number of things could happen to you. A minotaur can start chasing you through the forest. Someone could come up and try to rob you. Someone could come up and send you on a fantastic quest. A living, breathing world where NPCs would go about their everyday lives and go to work, go to bed, have their own routines. I had just never seen anything like that before, and for me, looking back on it, that is emblematic of what I think the 360 represents to me. The 360, that generation, it showed me the potential, what games could be. Back then, there was still the sentiment of, games are for kids, games are for losers. And I had felt like this before, but in this generation specifically, with the 360, with the PS3, that was the moment where I was like, people need to take games seriously. In terms of their artistic and entertainment value, they stand on par with the best television and movies that are coming out. There's so many memories from games in this generation that stick with me to this day. Dom's death in Gears of War 3, John Marston's Final Stand and Red Dead Redemption. The fact that I could remember where exactly I was in life when I experienced moments like those, to me that means games are just so much more. Yeah, they could be about racking up kill streaks, grinding away for loot and levels, but in terms of their emotional impact, their ability to bring people together and bring people joy, that doesn't get talked about nearly enough. And for me, those feelings really became clear in this 360 generation. And before the cynicism of the modern day set in of like, oh, these companies just pumping out games for a cash grab, they don't really care about us. Back then, I was so pumped, so freaking pumped to see what would come next. What's the next Oblivion gonna look like? Or the next Elder Scrolls game gonna look like? It was a time when we as a community were collectively excited for sequels. And looking back on it, I took that for granted, for sure, because, man, like, Oblivion came out in, 2006, and then 5 years later, they came out with Skyrim. And to think that we got 2 Elder Scrolls games in one generation is crazy. That's not happening anymore. Skyrim came out in 2011, and it's been 13 years, and we're not even anywhere close to getting the next Elder Scrolls game. When I finally was able to buy my own 360, that was in about 2007, right when BioShock was coming out, and also, I don't know if you remember, a game called Two Worlds. And I'll never forget this. When I went to GameStop to buy my 360, I was very seriously interested in buying Two Worlds because, like I said, I was a big fan of Oblivion. I'm a big fan of open world fantasy epic games like that. And in addition to buying Halo 3 so I can play with all my friends, I had enough money for one more game. And I narrowed it down to, okay, should I buy BioShock or should I buy Two Worlds? And you gotta keep in mind, okay, nowadays, there are all sorts of reviews out there. You can easily discern whether a game is good or bad or worth your money before you buy it nowadays. But back then, that wasn't really the case. It was still the early days of internet. So I genuinely thought that Two Worlds could give me as much enjoyment as a game like BioShock. And I remember so vividly, the GameStop employee was like, yeah, man, you're gonna wanna buy BioShock. I think you'll like that a lot more. And I pushed back on it. I was like, are you sure, man? Because I really like fantasy games. I liked Oblivion, so I think I could also like Two Worlds. And thank God he doubled down on it. He was like, no, man, I'm not hearing good things about that game. On the other side, I'm hearing fantastic things about BioShock. I really don't think you're gonna regret buying BioShock instead of Two Worlds. And thankfully, I listened to him. I ended up buying BioShock, which ended up being one of the most beloved games of all time, instead of Two Worlds, which is notorious for being one of the worst games that generation, that somehow got a sequel. Another thing that the 360 generation represents to me, and I've already kind of touched on this, but the social aspect of it. A huge part of my friendship with my buddy Matt revolved around this ritual of getting together and playing the coolest games that were available to us on the 360. And then when I got my own, that shifted to, okay, now I have my own Xbox, I can get Xbox Live, and I can connect with even more people who have a 360, not just people who go to my school or who are in my immediate friend group. No, people beyond that, people in other states, people in other countries. And sure, a lot of people like to paint that early era of Xbox Live as like the Wild West. Ooh, you would never survive in the old days of Xbox Live. It was too rough and tumble for a snowflake like you. I really don't remember. Yeah, like, I really don't remember it like that. I mean, there was a lot of trash talking and a lot of people calling each other whatever names, but more often than not, I met cool people that I would build lasting relationships with, even if I never met them face to face. I would log on and I would invite them to play, or they would invite me to their party. It's something that I don't really experience nowadays. I don't know, maybe I'm getting more introverted in my older years, but I don't know. The online community, the multiplayer community, I feel like it's missing a certain kind of spark that we had back in the day. That could be nostalgia glasses talking. And certainly a lot of you who watch this channel, well, like, y'all reach out to me, y'all invite me to play, and that's really, really cool. But would that be the case if I didn't have an Xbox YouTube channel? I don't know. It also doesn't help that, well, Xbox Live doesn't really exist anymore, at least not in name. Xbox Live has become Xbox Game Pass Core. And yeah, Game Pass Core functionally is the same thing minus the games with gold. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Game Pass and all that, but it's yet another example of something that we as Xbox fans have had to let go, a thing that initially drew us to the brand in the first place. To me, I became an Xbox fan because there were certain games that everyone was playing, that everyone was having a grand old time with, that you could only play on Xbox. I would also say Xbox Live was a huge part of that as well, the social aspect, later on being able to make my own avatar. I was known as the guy whose 360 avatar looked exactly like me. Like, you looked at my avatar, you were like, okay, yeah, that is Ray. That looks exactly like Ray. And third, it had that cool factor, like I was mentioning, that older brother coolness factor. Like, only cool dudes had an Xbox and played games like Gears where you can saw someone in half with a Lancer. All three of those aspects are things that seem to be missing from modern day Xbox. We already talked about how there's no Xbox Live anymore. More and more, they are pushing like a multi-platform light situation, and there are even rumors that they're gonna port over really iconic franchises like Halo and Gears. There's no red line over at Microsoft when it comes to porting their games over. And Xbox in recent years has positioned themselves as like, no, we're not just about like catering to a certain group of gamer bros. No, we are a platform for everybody. We got all types of games here, not just shooters. No, we got games for everybody. And it's like, I get why they're doing that because, well, they got to appeal to a broader audience in order to grow their brand and make money. I get it. But there are times where I'm like, I feel like Xbox, it needs a little bit of that edge back. Not too much because then it would be corny, like what was cool and edgy back in 2006 would be cringe nowadays. But I can't help but feel that modern day Xbox sometimes, it could use a little bit of grit. Sometimes they show flashes of that, like, oh, Gears of War E-Day at the showcase this past summer. That felt like old Xbox. Hopefully they could find more moments like that to kind of, I don't know, like pay tribute to their original identity, pay tribute to what originally made them successful going forward. Whereas in the 360 generation, yes, it was all about, oh, possibilities. This is what games could be. There are still possibilities when it comes to modern day Xbox. It just looks a little different. Like if I could travel back in time and tell myself, yo, young Ray, in the future, you'll be able to take an Xbox with you and play it on the patio on this thing called an iPad. And then young Ray would be like, what the hell's an iPad? And be like, oh, awesome. I'm about to double blow your mind. Or if I could say to him, dude, for $15 a month, soon to be 20, you'll be able to access hundreds of games, literally more games than you'll be able to play. Young Ray would have been like, whoa, that's crazy because I only get games when I'm able to save up a certain amount of money for my allowance, or maybe I get a game for my birthday or Christmas. Tops, maybe I get like 2-3 new games a year. And you're sitting here telling me that I can get potentially like dozens of new games every year. Of course, things like Game Pass and things like remote play, they're not without their drawbacks. But even though Xbox may not be as edgy as they used to be or whatever, as someone who grew up with not a ton of money, I feel like Xbox is really putting in a lot of work and giving us that bang for our buck. Now, the closure of the digital storefront, it's not the end of the world. All of the games that I was just talking about, Halo, Gears, Oblivion, Skyrim, all of those games are backwards compatible on modern day Xbox consoles, so they are not going anywhere. But there are a lot of games that don't have physical discs and they don't have backwards compatible support on the Series X or S. And those games are in real danger of disappearing forever if you don't buy them before the store closes. There are a lot of guides out there that identify which games those are. And because the storefront is closing, Xbox is running a really awesome sale so you can pick up those games before they disappear forever. It's a sad day, man. I mean, change can be hard. And it's tough to say goodbye to something that was so near and dear to our hearts for many years. But even though we've been going through some rough patches lately as Xbox fans, I believe that Xbox still has a lot to offer us and get us excited for. But in the meantime, why don't you go ahead and comment your favorite 360 memory down below? Consider subscribing, help me get to 200K. My buddy Jimmy recently hit 200,000 subs on PS already, and it's got me inspired to do the same sort of thing. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.